What's going on, guys? I'm Zach from the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we will be talking about Paradox Pokemon. Now, if you do not like Scarlet and Violet spoilers, this is not the video for you. Hop on out of here, because we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy stuff from the games. Okay, you should be gone now. Alright, let's get into it. So, Paradox Pokemon are a new thing that's going to be coming in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Because the games have kind of just really leaked and like just people have talked about what they've seen in them. We haven't seen like a lot of leaked gameplay, and we certainly haven't seen much about the plot or these Paradox Pokemon. We don't know much about them. We know that they are like these new Pokemon, so they will have new names, new dex numbers and everything, but they look very similar to Pokemon that we already know. For example, we actually saw a Jigglypuff Paradox, and we saw an Amoonguss Paradox, but like I said, they won't be that thing. It won't be Paradox Jigglypuff. It will be called something completely different. It won't be Paradox Amoonguss. It will be called something completely different. There are a couple of these in this game, which I'm not going to go over all of them here, but if you do want to see a full breakdown of all the Paradox Pokemon, be sure to check out this video by Dusty Gogo, where, of course, I accompanied him on talking about these Paradox Pokemon and all that we see from them. But we're not going through the list. We're going through what we know about them, and that is that they are also incredibly strong. They've been compared to Mega Evolutions or Legendary Pokemon in strength. They probably, to be honest with you, will be some kind of subset of Legendary Pokemon, in the same way that Ultra Beasts are kind of coded as like a subset of Legendary Pokemon. I'm not getting into this argument. It's coding. Don't argue with coding. Paradox Pokemon will probably be something similar. They even all have a common ability that is really strong, similar to how the Ultra Beasts had Beast Boost. So, the question is, what the heck are these? At first, when we saw Koraidon and Miraidon, we assumed, who are also Paradox Pokemon of Cyclizar, we assumed that these must be some kind of past and future forms, right? I mean, that makes sense. You know, it looks like a futuristic Cyclizar, Miraidon does, and Koraidon looks like a very primal caveman-like Cyclizar. Even the professors of this game, they look very futuristic and past, so it's kind of a reasonable assumption that they should be some kind of past version or future version. Think about how, like, they say that humans evolved from something else. It was another species. So yeah, we allegedly were this thing at some point, but we're not anymore, and it is a different species even though we were that. It's macro evolution. That's what these Paradox Pokemon were. We thought, and then it turned out that this isn't the case, because it says that Cyclizar has been by people's side since ancient times. Well, if it's been there since ancient times, then it wasn't a Koraidon. It was Cyclizar that had been by their side since ancient times. So that can't be it. So I started wondering if maybe this was something else. This was some kind of, I don't know, I guess like pushing time through it. I think about that scene in Avengers Endgame, if you've ever seen it, where they push time through Scott Lang and it turns him into a baby and to an old man and all this. I was wondering if maybe they did that with Cyclizar, and so they pushed it even further past ancient times. But I just didn't feel like that was it. And then I started thinking about that name, Paradox. What is a paradox? Well, it's actually two dots sitting next to each other. I'm sorry. A paradox is something that just can't coexist. So, like, for example, let's say that I had a time machine and I went back in time and killed my grandfather. That's a paradox, because by killing my grandfather, he could never have my parent, so I could never be born, so I could never kill my grandfather. But I did. You get what I mean? It's this thing that it can't really coexist with each other. I cannot both travel back in time to kill my grandfather and exist to do that at the same time. I can't. It's not possible. So it made me think, how does this apply to this game? What could be a paradox about this? What makes Koraidon and Cyclizar not supposed to exist at the same time? And then it hit me. We're dealing with alternate timelines. So Paradox Pokemon, the comparison to Ultra Beasts are even greater now because they are indeed from an alternate timeline in a similar way to how Ultra Beasts are from an alternate dimension. These Pokemon come from a timeline where there's no Jigglypuff. There's this weird vampire thing of Jigglypuff instead, and it's evil, and yeah. And there is no Cyclizar. There's Koraidon. This also explains, of course, how it's version exclusive, because you're dealing with a different alternate timeline. In Pokemon Scarlet, you're dealing with an alternate timeline that consists of things like Paradox, Jigglypuff, and Koraidon. In Pokemon Violet, you're dealing with a timeline that deals with other kinds of things like Miraidon or a Paradox of Hydreigon. That's just insane to me. I am super excited about this, and it also makes the other stuff make a lot more sense. So a lot of people have been wondering, why the heck are we calling these a whole different name and giving them a whole different dex number? Look at Amoonguss. It looks just like Amoonguss, just a little different. It looks like a regional form of Amoonguss. How is that a Paradox Pokemon? How is that a different Pokemon? Well, it's because it's an alternate timeline, so it is a different species. It's a completely different species. And it has a different name because in this alternate timeline, the name Amoonguss didn't really fit this Pokemon. Instead, they thought that it was whatever it's going to be named. Jigglypuff? Jigglypuff apparently is some kind of vampire caveman. It looks like it's going to be a little bit more violent because of the fangs. So, yeah, they probably looked at Paradox Jigglypuff and didn't exactly think that Jigglypuff was a fitting name for it. This also proves why these Pokemon can't evolve. We know that Paradox Jigglypuff, while it is a Paradox of Jigglypuff, there's no Paradox Wigglytuff. Why is that? Well, because in this alternate timeline, Jigglypuff doesn't evolve. Or, if they wanted to change it in the future and make it evolve, then they can easily explain it with, yeah, in this alternate timeline, Jigglypuff doesn't evolve in a way that we know how to in this timeline. And then they can easily kind of retcon it and be like, oh, we've discovered how it evolves. You give it this item and it'll evolve. That's what they did in the alternate timeline. That's what we do here. It's not with a Moonstone anymore. It's with this item. So there's ways to change that in the future, but again, it all makes sense that these Paradox Pokemon, after all, are just from another timeline that is separate from ours, and maybe judging by the Pokemon, judging by Koraidon and Miraidon, maybe the Scarlet alternate timeline is a little bit more primal, and maybe they haven't dealt a lot with electricity yet. And in the Miraidon timeline, it is going to be more futuristic and more tech-based. Think about how Star Wars, even though it's very futuristic, it's set in a galaxy, far, far away, and it's a long time ago. It could be something similar here. So is Obi-Wan Kenobi going to show up in Scarlet and Violet? I'm not saying that he is. I'm just saying he definitely is not. I'm totally kidding. But this is a huge breakthrough discovery on this stuff, and it also makes you have to think about the plot. What's going on with the plot of Scarlet and Violet? Well, it seems that someone is sending these Pokemon here to take it over. Someone's going to be trying to take over our timeline. We do know that the plot of these games is much more dark. We know that from both Ku and Kaka. They both said that the game's story is very dark. And Ku and Kaka, of course, are our leakers. And so we can assume that that's going to be the case. Something dark. And what's more dark than people from an alternate timeline coming in, replacing people in your timeline, and just trying to take over? Which is how Professor Sada and Turo tie into this. They probably aren't Professor Sada and Turo. I imagine Sada and Turo are people that really exist, but these people are from an alternate timeline and have come in, and in the Scarlet version, the alternate timeline Sada has replaced our Professor Sada, and in the Violet game, an alternate version of Professor Turo has come in and replaced our Professor Turo. Let me know what you think of this theory. Do you think we finally nailed what these Paradox Pokemon are? Be sure to let me know all that in the comments below. Be sure to also like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications because we talk about all things Pokemon. And when we get more information on this Paradox Pokemon or any fun theories that comes with it, you know we'll be covering it. Until next time, I will see all of you later.